To Professor Wright. You have a voice. Let's find it. And welcome back to Professor Wright. I am the professor, D.A. Adams. Glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us for video number 11. Now, in the previous videos, we've covered the first two stages of the writing process, pre-writing and writing. Now we're up to the final stage in the process, rewriting. And I know I've said this before in previous videos, but I'm going to say it again because it's very important. Rewriting is the most important stage of the entire process. You must plan ahead and plan on doing rewriting if you want to be effective as a writer. This applies whether you are a student writing essays or somebody who aspires to write books or short stories or whatever. You have to plan ahead and budget your time and leave yourself time to rewrite. Because most people want to procrastinate. Most people want to put stuff off until the last possible second. And so they end up doing their writing stage very, very late in the game. And they don't leave themselves enough time to do proper rewriting. If you want to be effective and you want to be good at what you do, you must plan ahead and leave yourself enough room and enough time to do some rewriting. Now, I'm leaving the screen blank for a few minutes because I want you to just listen to me, because I don't want to put any visuals up here that are going to reinforce bad habits. The way most people rewrite when they're first starting out or when they're first learning to write or however you want to say that, the way most people do it is they start reading their document at the beginning and they look for mistakes. And when they find a mistake, they make a mark around it or fix it right then or do something. And they just go through the whole thing, and whenever they run across a mistake, they try to fix it. Now, on the surface, that may sound reasonable. On the surface, that may sound like the logical way to do it. Because, how else are you supposed to do it? You start reading at the beginning and you look for mistakes, right? But there's a problem with doing it in that way. And that problem has to do with how the brain focuses on things. If you start reading your document, whatever it is, and you're just looking for mistakes, you may run across something and you may find, let's say in the first paragraph, you find a comma splice where you've tried to join two complete sentences with a comma. And if you're writing a paper for a class, typically that's a very egregious error that will get you marked down quite a bit, depending on who your English teacher is or who your teacher is and how they grade as far as grammar goes. So you find that mistake in the first paragraph, and now you're fixated on that mistake. And so you are going to be looking for that mistake very closely. The problem with that is you stop looking for other things. And now you're just focused in on just that first mistake that you found, hoping that you don't see it again. And it kind of put blinders on you as far as seeing other mistakes. Let me give you an analogy that'll kind of bring this to light. I'm a scatterbrain. I lose things constantly. And so let's say, because this happens to me all the time, let's say I've lost both my car keys and my cell phone. And I need to leave. I've got an appointment. I've got to be somewhere. So I'm running around my place looking for both my car keys and my cell phone. And I cannot find them anywhere. So finally I settle down and say, okay, I cannot leave until at least I have my car keys. If I have those, then I can worry about the cell phone later. But I've got to have my car keys to be able to leave. So let me find those first. So I go back and start looking, and I find the car keys laying in some place where I looked 3 times already. Now, they were there when I looked before. The reason I didn't see them is because I wasn't really looking for anything. I was looking for both the cell phone and the car keys at the same time, and I wasn't seeing what was actually there. I was just looking around. So now that I've got my keys, I look around specifically for my cell phone, and there it is. It's laying in a place, again, where I've looked 2 or 3 times already. So I grab it up, and there now I've got both of them. The problem before is that I was looking for everything and I wasn't seeing anything. And the same thing happens when you rewrite. If you try to look for everything at once, you end up doing one of two things. You either miss a lot, or you do like the first example I gave you. You fixate on one thing, focus in on it, and that's all you end up looking for. I'm going to show you a process for rewriting that is much better and much more effective if you will follow it. We're going to break this process down into 3 steps. The first step, we're going to read the whole document. And as we're reading that whole document from beginning to end, all the way through, we're going to look for 2 very specific things. The first thing I want you looking for is, does this document flow? Does the language flow from beginning to end? Now, those of you who are just starting out, or maybe those of you who don't read a whole lot, this one's going to take some time for you because there's a flow to language that most things follow. And the more you write and the more you read, the more that flow is just an innate part of you. But for those who don't read a lot and don't write a lot, it takes time for you to get that feel down and get that rhythm down. Now, if you're just starting out in school, if you're just starting out in college, you're going to have plenty of opportunities to write, and you're going to have plenty of opportunities to read if you'll take advantage of them. And as you go through, learning that flow will get better. If you're trying to be a professional writer, I cannot stress enough how important it is that you learn to recognize and identify the good flow of language, because that'll be very important for you as far as developing your skills. The second thing that I want you looking for is, does this document make sense? Very simple. Do you run across any areas where you yourself read it and go, what in the heck am I trying to say? If you run across any of those areas, there's probably a problem there, because you know what you meant to say, and if you can't figure it out, somebody who doesn't know what you meant to say sure as heck can't. Now, it's very important that you follow these next couple of pieces of advice. While you're reading the entire document from beginning to end, do not stop reading to make corrections. Keep reading it all the way through. And do not look for errors other than those two that I just mentioned, the document flowing and the document making sense. That's all you are looking for right now. If you run across a section where just somehow the flow breaks down and the writing there just comes across as clunky to you and there's something wrong with it, do not stop and try to work on that right then. Make a little notation to yourself somehow. I don't care how you do it. Type in some X's on the page. If you're working on pen and paper, take your pen and make a little mark, or use a highlighter and make a little mark. Do something that tells you later to go back and look at that section more closely and figure out why it doesn't flow or why it doesn't make sense. But right now, you want to keep reading, because while you're reading that whole document, you're trying to get a sense of the entire thing. How does it all fit together? You cannot get that sense of how the whole document fits together if you're stopping and starting, stopping and starting, stopping and starting. So read the entire document from beginning to end, and when you run across mistakes in the flow and in whether or not it makes sense, just make a notation to yourself to go back and look at that later. Now, the mistakes that you find here, there are going to be three basic ways that you can fix them. The first is you may just have to add to it. It may not be flowing well because it needs a transitional phrase put into it. Or maybe you've left out a couple of words. Or maybe you need a bridge sentence in between this sentence and that one to connect them together and make them sound better. You may need to move it. Maybe you've got your sentences in the wrong order. Or maybe you're making your points in the wrong order and that's why they don't make sense. Or maybe that's why they don't flow. So maybe you can move things around and that will improve it. The third way that you can fix these mistakes is by deleting. Now, this is a very hard one for young writers to do, because you worked hard coming up with those words. You worked hard coming up with those ideas. You do not want to give them up. And if you're writing a paper for class, and let's say your instructor has said that paper needs to be 1,000 words, and you're sitting there at 1,052 words, and now I'm telling you, cut 40 of them out because they don't belong. That's a very hard thing to do, because now you start getting closer and closer to falling short of where you're supposed to be. But sometimes deleting unnecessary information or deleting writing that just does not work is the best way to fix it. And it took me a long time to where I got comfortable with that, where I got comfortable with understanding that everything I write is not golden. And every thought that pops into my head is not something that needs to be salvaged. Some of them can go by the wayside. Quite a few of them can go by the wayside. And the more comfortable you get with that, the better your writing becomes. Because you stop feeling like you're shackled to poor writing, and you stop feeling like you're shackled to things that do not move forward what it is you're trying to say. So you as a student and you as a young writer, you have to learn how to let go of the writing that you have that is not working. Now, that's the first step to the rewriting process. I'm going to stop there in this video, and we're going to pick back up in video 12 and cover the next two steps, because again, I don't want each individual video to get too long. I want to keep around the 10-minute mark. So we're at a good place to stop now. Please come back for video number 12, because the next two steps are more important, I think, than even this first one is. So please join me for video number 12. We will pick back up with the rewriting stage of the writing process. And in video 12, we will also close out the writing process as a whole. All right, so I'm D.A. Adams. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.